Alrighty, welcome back to BeamNG.drive. We're going to be going over a basis and then a deep dive of suspension tuning specifically for off-roading. We're going to start out in the trophy trucks here and then the pre-runner. And then we're going to go to the roamer and maybe like a D-series crawler with a 3-link up front. And just kind of go over a basis of a suspension tune that works for crawling. And maybe some other things in general on what you want and what causes what. So first off, we're going to start at the what is what part. So, okay, that's a little too far out. So the new bypass update. Not many people probably know what it does. I'm not going to get a big explanation of what is different, but we're going to get into an explanation of how to tune bypasses. So here's your coilover. And these are the bypasses. They're called bypasses because they bypass oil flow with these valves right here. That's what those tubes are. They control valves inside it and direct oil flow depending on velocity and where the oil flow is. So yeah, these are your bypass shunts. You're not going to see these on everything. I think so the D series, the Dune Kicker. This is not going to have them. It just has coilovers. There are some on... what's it called? Some of the other trucks. The new Rock Basher, and they all function the same generally, except different suspension is going to act differently. So, anyways, we're going to get into what does what now on the bypasses. So, actually, we're going to start with the coilovers and kind of give her a basis of what does what there, because those are on most vehicles. So your preload, that is going to change this right here and this. They're both going to go down a set amount. So if you move it all the way down, it's going to lift this thing way up and provide a lot of preload on the springs and make it very stiff. Give you ride height, which you can also get by changing the primary spring rate. The primary spring is the lower spring, the bigger spring, the longer spring, the one that does most of the work. And the secondary, it just does the work that the primary spring isn't long enough to do. So when it's like this, when you're full droop, going over whoops or jumping, that secondary spring keeps that the primary spring in contact with the shock, and so it doesn't just kind of free float. It doesn't have a main job. It just kind of, or like a huge purpose. It just kind of is there to help. It's commonly called a helper spring or a tender spring. And so spring dividers stop. That changes, so that is going to change where this is up and down. So if this divider one, so we raise it all the way. Can't really see. You cannot really see that at all. We're going to go all the way down so we can hopefully more depict that. Alright, there we go. So that is way further down, more pressure on the lower spring, less on the upper spring. So it in turn gives it preload on this spring, but it lowers the preload on this spring. So we're going to go back to, I think, right there. And now we're going to go into bypasses and what does what, compression versus rebound. So, compression and rebound. This is compression going down, kind of a little forceful there. And the rebound is coming up. So, compression, rebound. And the bypasses do a lot more than just your coilovers. Your coilovers only control your compression overall, your fast compression overall, rebound, and fast rebound overall. Not in different zones. So the fast rebound is faster bumps, so like square-edged bumps that are more sudden, like whoops, generally don't fall into the fast compression. And people can correct me if I'm wrong. Certain vehicles perform differently, and the fast compression is at a different speed than other vehicles. Point being is that generally I don't even mess with these a whole lot when we have the bypasses. The bypasses do most of the work. So the base config for the Unlimited truck and the Spec truck are very, very, very good at eating whoops and big bumps. I will say, if you want to do some like small bump performance, this is where the bypasses come in. So small bumps being like small rocks, stuff like that you can see here in the background. stuff that you're going to see when you're playing in first person that give you some screen shake. So this is a short compression. So as you can see, it gives you a little description, and it doesn't tell you where is what. So percent, that is how much the valve is open. So the short compression valve right now is 25% open or 75% closed. So there it's all the way open. And as you can see, that controls 0 to 40% of travel. Now, this depends if you want sag, suspension sag. Right now it is about 50% sag, maybe a little bit more even. So we're actually going to be, to get some softer suspension right where we're at, we would adjust the mid compression, which is 40 to 60%. And then after that, it's a long compression, which really controls when you're hitting big bumps and you're deep in the travel. But so if you change the short compression to way open, that's going to soften the suspension. Oh, that's the light. In this portion of the travel, when you're closer to fully extended, and give you a more plush ride right there. So when you're kind of floating over the top of whoops, it'll really get down to the deeper travel a lot faster. So that's when you want to leave this generally in the middle or lower area to give you some bottom out support. So then the short rebound is actually, it's kind of the opposite. It controls the rebound right there to like right in there. What's it actually say for the 20 to 60? So from right in there to probably right in there. And then you have the long, which controls the rest. And then this does compression and rebound overall. Over the entire course of travel, it controls that. So this, like I said, is a base unlimited configuration. I believe I said that. And this is my tune of the D-Series. Is my center of gravity on for this? Yeah. So as you'll see, the center of gravity is lower and farther back in the trophy truck. The wheelbase is like 6 inches shorter on this truck. Center of gravity is higher and further forward, which is going to cause a difference in your line of force, which is where the force goes through a kind of a line between your suspension linkage. So the further back your center of gravity, generally the better in Baja type trucks. For rock crawling, it's complete opposite. You want a pretty far forward one so you don't flip over backwards. So we're going to, now that we've kind of went over the bypass, what does what, I'm not going to get into any farther on showing that. And I'm going to get into a bass tune after I hit this section here for the Roamer. And then I'll go to a D-Series with standard suspension and kind of go over what you'll want. Oh wow, I'm used to driving the 440 horsepower one. So with these big square edge bumps here, you're going to want some bottom out support, like I was mentioning about the short compression, so that you don't go straight to completely bottomed out. Otherwise it's going to kick really bad on the rear end. And by kick, I'm going to, it might do it some here. Yeah, not really, no. This truck is really good. So it eats all that up completely fine. This truck, I know will not, for many reasons. My tune probably isn't perfect, but the center of gravity and the weight have a huge effect. So on this bump here, we're probably going to bottom out pretty hard on the rear end, and it's going to kick it forward, and it actually tried to leave the ground there, the back tires did, before full extension. Yep, kicked again. Overall, it still is a fast truck, and you can control it. Very fast truck. Oh, I'm still full throttle on this thing. Wait, no, I'm not. Okay. But, that kind of shows what trophy truck suspension does. It controls those bypasses, eat up these big bumps, and then, if you go over, like, where the Roamer's at, which is over here, we're going to have a lot of small bumps. And that's where my tune on this truck is actually going to kind of show. I have the valves much more open on the short compression. So we're at 60% open and 77% open. So like I said, open, closed. Open, close. We're going to actually load my Ultra 4 tune real quick. And camera's messed up. So this has really, really soft short compression and mid compression. So it's going to be soft throughout most of the travel until you get really deep in the... Oh, that's the wrong thing. Until you get really deep, it's going to be soft. Okay, it's not grabbing any of the nodes I want it to. So soft, 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 and we're going to get harder down in there, really stiff. It's still going to eat up gobs of travel over the smallest bumps. It's kind of like a plusher ride. Like I was mentioning, that center of gravity has a huge effect. But as you can see, this thing just eats these up, uses a lot of travel for not very big bumps. So this thing will not eat the whoops. It'll bottom out too hard, and you'll end up crashing. But overall, that's kind of the basis of the bypasses. I shouldn't say basis, because that was really in-depth, I think. Hopefully it makes sense, and if not, you can leave a comment, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. They're not easy to understand. That's out of the way enough. So, the roamer. So generally, when you're crawling, you're going to want a lot of flex. You're going to want to be able to flex out and actually keep traction on all four wheels for your best chance of making up obstacles. So, I don't know if I have... Do I have... I can't really... yeah, I have a sway bar on the rear. Do I have a sway bar on the front? No, no sway bar on the front. So I don't have a sway bar on the front end, but I do on the rear, because this thing kind of tends to, I know it kind of is loppy, like, not loppy, floppy, and tends to try to flip over. So first off, your final drive gear ratio, you'll want to turn those down. And to do that, you're going to want to, this is for less experienced people, of course, go into your differential, and you're going to want to lock in first of all, so that you can lock it right here. That's locked when it's more white. The center part is filled in. And locked, unlocked, unlocked. And then put in a race adjustable final drive. And then you can get it lower, because the standard options are only up to 444 to 1. Basically, that's how many revolutions it takes for one revolution of the tire. So 6 revolutions per one rotation of the tire. If you go all the way down here, that's 2 revolutions or 1 revolution of the tire. So this takes a lot more revolutions of the motor and drive shaft to get the tires to rotate one time, which in turn makes your lowest speed that you can go without stalling, if you have realistic on, lower, and it's better for crawling. So as you'll see, I think these are actually pretty standard settings here for the off-road coilovers on the 3-link, and I do have it lifted all the way up, and then you can just copy my stuff here if you want, but you're going to want your dampening pretty soft, because you're not really trying to absorb anything at high speed. If you are trying to absorb stuff at high speed, just turn these up some until you kind of get your desired effect. Don't mess with the rebound too much, because if you slow it down too much, you're not going to maintain traction with or contact with the ground. So when you're going over bumps, you want your axle to follow the terrain as best as possible. But you can go too fast and you can go too slow, and you'll kind of have to learn. I would just leave it at the base setting, and if it's not working, go from there. All suspension is different, so I can't tell you a setting that just works for everything, or even most things. It's very specific per vehicle, and per suspension, even per weight of the vehicle. And like I said, low gear ratio. I have my first gear as 5:1, reverse 5:1, and then so length, that is going to adjust your front axle forward or backward. So this is forward, that's backwards. This extends my wheelbase and hopefully helps it crawl. Not really sure if that actually has a huge effect. Now, one thing that'll help massively with the new update is the tire ballast. I'm running the heaviest I can run in most of my crawlers in the front and then nothing in the rear. It might benefit some if I put it in the rear, but generally I'm not struggling for traction in the rear, and it's not going to affect my center of gravity. So I run that really heavy up front, and then I run really low tire pressures, as you can see and as displayed in the tire pressure. Lower tire pressure gives you more tire contact on the ground and will allow you to have more traction, especially on rocks. So we're going to give a quick little run on this thing. We're going to lock the diffs. Nice lag spike there. CPU is not having a good time. There are things this thing can't do. There are climbs in Beam that just are flat out too steep for any crawler, and you will have to get speed for them. There's one actually right up here on the right side. Wait, not that one. Okay. Oh, my God. That's not supposed to happen. So I can't go on the right line here. It is too steep to get traction. I've tried dozens of times on multiplayer. But I can make it up the left line, no problem. And you'll see, maybe here I can show the flex a little bit. I'm giving out my sneaky lines here, but so you want to lift your suspension height and then keep a softer spring rate, generally speaking. So like I said, come on, load, please, faster. So the more you raise your suspension height, the lower your spring rate can be. So like if I had my spring height down here, I would have to have a much higher spring rate, which spring rate is per corner. So if it has a higher spring rate, it's going to take more force to use the flex. So if you want more flex, you're going to want a lower spring rate and a higher spring height. If it's flexing too much and flipping over, then kind of find a happy medium in between there of spring height and spring rate to get your desired ride height. And I really hope this doesn't sound too foreign to everyone, and that it makes sense. This line here is actually a pain. I don't know why I came here. So we're gonna hit F8. This might be a trick for a lot of people. So if you hit F8 and then you fly to wherever you want with free cam, and then get relatively close to the ground, and hit F7, and then you teleport your vehicle that you're currently in. So this is what 6-to-1 final drives in the diffs and then 5-to-1 transmission looks like. I literally can just let out the clutch and let it ride up it. So yeah, low tire pressures, front end. You want it to generally be heavier for crawling. Because some people were asking about off-roading specifically, but not a specific kind of off-roading, so we're just going to go into crawling, because I know a lot of people do crawling based on the servers I've been playing. So we're actually going to go into the hopper. I see a lot of vehicles that I cannot use right now because I'm in vanilla Beam, pretty much. That big jigga. So this one is tuned already to my desired tune, I guess. And as you can see, very flexy. It's got the 44s on it. And I took the bypasses off. I know I didn't. This is not the tune. Disregard, I can't use my own eyes. So the bypasses are totally, obviously there. But sometimes I'll take them off because I don't need them. I'm not going high speed. But this one I do have the bypasses. So, again, you can just copy this, pause the video if you want to just copy my tune after seeing it. The hopper, I will say, it is by far one of the best flat ground crawlers. But when you get into steep stuff, it is terrible. It has a really far back center of gravity relative to some of the other vehicles, and it takes mods or luck to drive it on the steeper terrain. The D-Series and the Roamer are about the best options you have for vanilla vehicles. Otherwise, the repository has I think, the goat-built Ibex buggy, I think is what it's called. Either way, it's like the Ibex buggy. It's one of the really good crawlers out there that is easily and readily available. So, short compression, I have really soft. Then I have a little bit more bottom-out support here in the middle and the long compression, which is, deeper travel. But this is where it really helps with crawling. So I don't think I don't have sway bars at all on this, do I? I have a sway bar on the rear. Yeah, sway bar on the rear, none on the front. I commonly do that. Just my kind of preference. Really soft damping on the rear and front coilovers. But what's going to really show is your spring settings here. So, if you max out your spring height, max out the spring collar height, that is going to give you this right here, that collar, is going to be the highest it can be. So your primary spring, or main spring in this truck, is going to be as soft as possible and have the least amount of preload. So you're going to, and then you can run it super soft mainspring rate, and it'll flex much easier and conform to the terrain better. Not saying this is the best way to do it. This is just the best way to get flex, not necessarily stability. But it is very good at flexing out. I'm just going to kind of crawl straight here. I'm not saying my tune is the best by any means, and these tires are too big for the fenders, clearly. Nope, grinding the gears. We're gonna speed over to here real quick. So this is one of those climbs that you cannot make it up without speed. Nope, I stalled. Well, at least in my tries, you cannot make it up without speed. And I'm going to show you why. Beam does not like steep terrain. No matter what tires you have, it just does not like steep terrain, and you just spin, or in this case, probably going to flip over. So we're going to let it just crawl in first gear. Okay, no throttle here. This is completely idling, and as you can see, I have no control of the front tires. They are completely, yep, and there you go. That is why the Jeep is kind of sorry, the hopper. The center of gravity is too far back and not low enough. Even with the suspension tuned as well as you can possibly tune it, it just doesn't compare to the Romer and the D-Series, in my opinion, and experience. So, yeah, I hope that kind of goes over most things. I was going to make this video a little bit longer and kind of go over more on in-depth, but I'll kind of get some feedback and see what you guys think, what you guys want to see more of, and I appreciate any feedback. It really goes a long ways. Yeah, so let me know what you guys think, and if this helped. Thank you.